Have you ever sent a text to the wrong person and felt your heart drop into your stomach? Now imagine that text was, "I miss you," and the recipient was your boss. That's exactly what happened to Mark Collins, a single father struggling to balance work, parenting, and the crushing weight of loneliness after losing his wife. What his boss whispered when she showed up at his door changed everything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us how unexpected moments can transform our lives. Mark Collins stared at his phone in horror. The message glowed mockingly on the screen. "I miss you so much it hurts sometimes." Only after hitting send did he realize he hadn't texted his late wife's number as he sometimes did on difficult nights. He'd accidentally sent it to his boss, Katherine Reynolds. "No, no, no," he muttered, frantically typing an explanation. But before he could send it, 3 dots appeared. Katherine was already responding. Mark threw the phone onto the couch as if it had burned him and buried his face in his hands. At 36, Mark had been a widower for 2 years. Emma had died suddenly from an aneurysm, leaving him alone to raise their daughter, Lily, who was now 7. He worked as a senior graphic designer at Reynolds Marketing, where Katherine, a focused, somewhat intimidating woman in her early 40s, had built a respected agency from the ground up. The phone chimed. Mark couldn't bring himself to look. Instead, he peeked in on Lily, who was finally asleep after a particularly difficult bedtime. Tonight had been the school talent show, and watching all the mothers helping their daughters had reopened a wound that never fully healed. When they returned home, Lily had cried herself to sleep, clutching her mother's photo. It was in that moment of raw grief that Mark had reached for his phone to text Emma's number, something he did when the loneliness became unbearable. A ritual that helped him feel connected to her somehow. Except tonight, he'd scrolled too far and tapped on his most recent work conversation instead. The phone chimed again. Mark finally gathered the courage to look. "Katherine, Mark? Is everything okay?" "Katherine, I'm concerned. This doesn't seem like you. Can we talk?" Mark groaned. Katherine was professional to a fault. They had a good working relationship, but it was strictly business. She valued his design work and had been understanding about his situation as a single parent, allowing him flexible hours when needed. But they weren't friends. They certainly weren't close enough for late-night confessional texts. He typed quickly, "I am so sorry, Katherine. That message was not meant for you. Please ignore it. See you Monday." Her response came immediately, "Who was it meant for?" Mark hesitated. The truth was embarrassing, but lying would only make things worse. "My wife's old number. Sometimes I still text it. Tonight was rough with Lily. Again, I apologize for the mistake." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "No need to apologize. Get some rest, Mark." He exhaled with relief. Crisis averted. Katherine was nothing if not professional. By Monday, this would be forgotten. But at 10:30 the next morning, Saturday, his doorbell rang. Mark opened the door, Lily's half-assembled science project forgotten behind him, to find Katherine Reynolds standing on his porch. She wore jeans and a casual sweater instead of her usual tailored suits, her dark hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its typical severe bun. "Katherine," he stammered. "What are you?" "I brought coffee," she said, holding up a carrier with 2 cups. "And hot chocolate." She nodded toward Lily, who had appeared curiously behind her father. Before Mark could respond, Lily piped up. "Are you Daddy's boss? The one who makes him work late sometimes?" Katherine's expression softened as she knelt to Lily's level. "I am. And I'm sorry about that. Maybe I can help with whatever you're working on to make up for it." Lily's face lit up. "We're building a solar system. Daddy's not very good at the rings on Saturn." "Well, it just so happens that Saturn's rings are my specialty," Katherine said with a wink. Mark stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Katherine Reynolds, the woman who struck fear into the hearts of marketing executives across the city, who never mixed business with personal life, was in his living room on a Saturday morning, offering to help his daughter with her science project. "You really don't have to do this," he said quietly as Lily dragged Katherine toward the kitchen table covered in styrofoam balls and paint. Katherine paused, turning to face him. "I know," she said simply. Then, lowering her voice, she added, "Everyone needs someone sometimes, Mark. Even if it's just to help with Saturn's rings." For the next 2 hours, Mark watched in amazement as his intimidating boss helped his daughter create a solar system. Katherine was patient, funny, and surprisingly knowledgeable about astronomy. Lily was enchanted, hanging on her every word. When the project was complete and drying on the counter, Katherine accepted Mark's offer of lunch. Over sandwiches, Lily chattered about school, her friends, and how much she missed her mom sometimes. "My mom died when I was 9, Katherine said suddenly, surprising both Mark and herself with the admission. "It was just my dad and me after that." Lily's eyes widened. "Like me and Daddy?" Katherine nodded. "Just like you and your dad. Did you forget what she looked like?" Lily asked in a small voice. Katherine's expression softened. "No, sweetheart. I never forgot. And you won't either." After lunch, Lily asked if she could show Katherine her rock collection, and Mark found himself alone in the kitchen, washing dishes and trying to make sense of this surreal day. Katherine Reynolds had layers he'd never imagined. When Katherine returned to the kitchen, she leaned against the counter beside him. "She's an amazing kid." "She is," Mark agreed. "Thank you for today. You didn't have to come over." Katherine was quiet for a moment. "When I got your text last night, it resonated with me. I know what it's like to miss someone so much it physically hurts. I know what it's like to feel alone in a crowded room." Mark turned to look at her, really seeing her for the first time. Not as his boss, but as a person with her own history, her own pain. "After my husband died 5 years ago," Katherine continued, "I threw myself into work. Built the agency into what it is today. But sometimes I still find myself reaching for my phone to tell him something funny that happened, or turning to his side of the bed before remembering he's not there." "I had no idea," Mark said softly. "I don't talk about it. Especially not at work." She smiled wryly. "I have a reputation to maintain, after all." Mark laughed, and it felt good. Natural. The Ice Queen of Reynolds marketing has a heart after all. "Don't spread that around," she warned, but her eyes were smiling. When Lily returned to the kitchen, she had a proposition. "Can Katherine come to the park with us? We always go to the park on Saturdays." Mark looked at Katherine apologetically. "You've already given up your morning." "I'd love to," Katherine interrupted. "If that's okay with your dad." The afternoon at the park was filled with more laughter than Mark had experienced in months. Katherine pushed Lily on the swings, raced her down the slides, and helped her build an elaborate sand castle in the playground. Mark found himself watching them, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. As the sun began to set, they walked back to Mark's house, Lily skipping ahead, clutching an ice cream cone Katherine had insisted on buying her. "She's going to crash hard tonight," Mark said, watching his daughter's sugar-fueled energy. "Worth it," Katherine replied. "Days like this are what she'll remember." When they reached the house, Lily threw her arms around Katherine's waist. "Will you come back tomorrow? We're going to Grandma's for dinner, but you could come too." Katherine glanced at Mark, who shrugged helplessly. "That's very sweet, Lily, but I don't want to intrude on family time." "But you could be family too," Lily said with a child's straightforward logic. "Daddy needs friends. He's lonely." Mark felt his face flush with embarrassment. "Lily." "It's okay," Katherine said gently. Your dad and I work together, sweetheart. But I had a wonderful time today. After Lily reluctantly went inside to wash up, Mark turned to Katherine on the porch. I'm sorry about that. Kids and their lack of filters. Don't apologize. She's right, everyone needs people. Katherine hesitated. Including me. The admission hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest. Thank you for today, Mark said finally. It meant a lot to Lily. And to me. Katherine nodded, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She scribbled something on the back and handed it to him. My personal number. In case you ever want to text the right person instead. As she turned to leave, Mark called after her. Katherine? What made you come here today? She paused at the bottom of the steps, looking back at him. When I got your text, I realized something. We've all been through loss, Mark. Some of us just hide it better than others. She smiled softly. And sometimes the universe sends us exactly what we need, even if it comes in the form of a misdirected text message. With that, she walked to her car, leaving Mark standing on the porch, the business card warm in his hand. That night, after Lily was asleep, Mark sat on his couch staring at Katherine's card. The woman he'd met today was nothing like the boss he thought he knew. She was warm, funny, vulnerable, and she understood his pain in a way few others could. Before he could overthink it, he picked up his phone and typed a message to her personal number. Thank you for today. Lily hasn't stopped talking about you. I haven't seen her that happy in a long time. The response came quickly. I haven't been that happy in a long time either. Mark smiled, feeling something shift inside him, a door opening that had been closed for too long. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected began to bloom. Katherine joined them for Sunday dinners at his mother-in-law's house, where she was welcomed with open arms. She helped Lily with homework, introduced them to her rescue dog, Bentley, and slowly became a fixture in their lives. At work, they maintained their professional relationship, though Mark occasionally caught her smiling at him across the conference room in a way that made his heart skip. 3 months after the misdirected text, Mark invited Katherine to dinner, just the two of them. Over pasta and wine, they talked for hours about their lost spouses, their grief journeys, their fears about moving forward. I'm scared, Mark admitted. Not just of starting something new, but of what Emma would think. Katherine reached across the table and took his hand. From everything you've told me about her, I think she'd want you and Lily to be happy. What about you? Mark asked. Are you scared? Katherine nodded. Terrified. I built walls after David died. Focusing on work was easier than facing the emptiness. But then you accidentally texted me, and something told me I needed to show up at your door. I'm glad you did, Mark said softly. As they stood on his porch that night, the air between them charged with possibility, Katherine leaned close and whispered in his ear, sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a mistake. Then she kissed him, and Mark felt something he thought he'd never feel again, hope. 6 months later, Katherine moved into their home. Lily helped her decorate her home office and insisted they adopt another dog to keep Bentley company. Mark's mother-in-law gave her blessing, telling Mark through tears that Emma would approve. On the anniversary of that fateful text message, Mark took Katherine back to the park where they'd spent their first day together. As the sun set over the playground, he knelt on one knee. I never expected to find love again, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But you showed me that the heart has an infinite capacity for love, that loving you doesn't diminish what I had with Emma, but honors it. Katherine's eyes filled with tears as he continued. You walked into our lives when we needed you most, and you had the courage to let us into yours. You've shown Lily what strength looks like, what resilience looks like. You've shown me what it means to open your heart again after unimaginable loss. He opened a small box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. Katherine Reynolds, will you marry me and make our accidental family official? Yes, she whispered, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. 1,000 times yes. As they embraced, Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Lily, who was waiting anxiously at home with her grandmother. Did she say yes? Mark smiled, showing the message to Katherine. Together, they typed a response. She said yes. We're coming home, all of us, together. 1 year later, as Mark watched Katherine walk down the aisle toward him, Lily standing proudly as their flower girl, he marveled at how a single mistaken text had changed everything. How the universe had known exactly what they all needed, even when they didn't. During their vows, Katherine looked into his eyes and said, "Some people spend their whole lives searching for their person. I found mine through a text message that wasn't even meant for me." It just goes to show that love finds us in the most unexpected ways, at exactly the right time. At the reception, Mark's mother-in-law raised her glass in a toast. To Emma, she said, her voice steady despite her tears, who would be so happy to see the family she loved surrounded by so much joy. And to Katherine, who had the courage to show up on that porch and help heal 2 broken hearts. Later that night, as they swayed together for their first dance, Katherine leaned close and whispered in Mark's ear, "I'm so glad you texted the wrong person that night." Mark pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "Actually," he said with a smile, "I think I texted exactly the right person." Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes we lose people we can't imagine living without. Sometimes we send messages to the wrong person. But sometimes, those mistakes turn out to be the universe's way of guiding us exactly where we need to be. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories about love, loss, and the beautiful accidents that change our lives forever. Remember that healing isn't linear, second chances come in unexpected packages, and sometimes the best things in life begin with a simple mistake.